Welcome back. I'm Stephanie Ruhle with a couple of legal pads in front of me, which means we're talking Paul Manafort. His fate is now in the hands of a jury. Deliberations are set to begin any minute now after both sides wrapped up closing arguments yesterday. In their final pitch to the jury, Robert Mueller's prosecutors pointed to what they call overwhelming evidence that Manafort schemed and lied about his finances for personal gain. And Manafort's attorney argued the government had not met its burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, while deflecting the blame onto Manafort's longtime protege, Rick Gates. If found guilty, Trump's former campaign chair could spend the rest of his life in prison. NBC's Ken Delanian is outside the courthouse in Alexandria, Virginia, and joining me in the newsroom, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Bob Bianchi. Ken, I got to go to you first because you have been in this courthouse for over a week. Take us to the mood among jurors.
It's always dangerous to speculate, Stephanie, about the mindset of jurors, but I can tell you that they've been an attentive jury. Several jurors appear to have taken careful notes. They also seem to have a rapport among themselves. There was a day when they celebrated the birthday of a juror with a birthday cake. They could be seen joking and laughing in the hallways. But look, as a courtroom observer, it seems to me that the prosecution has put on an extraordinarily powerful case against Paul Manafort, but you just never know how the jury is taking it. The thing about these tax and bank fraud charges are that the prosecution doesn't just have to prove that Paul Manafort didn't pay his taxes and submitted false information to banks. They have to prove that he willfully intended to commit crimes, to defraud the IRS, to defraud these banks. And while there was a lot of persuasive evidence that would allow the jury to infer that, there was no tape of Paul Manafort's voice money from the IRS. There was no smoking gun email. So you're really relying on this jury to take this mass of documents and this witness testimony and make a series of inferences, and you never know what a jury's going to do. Sometimes juries hold prosecution to unreasonably high standards. Sometimes they interpret reasonable doubt as I should have no doubt at all. So we just don't know what's going to happen, but jury deliberations are about to get underway in this courthouse behind me, Seth.
And we know that Judge Ellis was certainly holding the prosecution to a very high standard, and he didn't really have the opportunity to do so with the defense because they rested. Bob, I want to play for you what Manafort's defense attorney said last night as he walked out of the courthouse. Take a look.
Mr. Manafort was very happy with how things went today. His defense team got to address the jury, point out the shortcomings in the government's case, and explain how the government has not met their burden of proof.
So what do you think? Do you think prosecutors met their burden of proof standard, or do you think there's enough doubt in the jury's mind that this guy could get off?
I think they have a very compelling case. I have been saying from the beginning of this case, though, as a prosecutor myself who's called cooperating witnesses to the stand, you do it very sparingly and only if you need to. And the calling of Rick Gates concerned me then, and it concerns me now. Why? Look at the prosecutor's statement. It was basically justifying Rick Gates and why he was on the stand. And then the prosecutor said, forget about basically Gates. Let's just look at the documentary evidence. That's the star witness. So why call him?
Well, to that point, and I want to share that because they say over 12 days they brought forward 388 photos, emails, and other documents, as well as 27 witnesses. So it wasn't just Rick Gates. In fact, what Rick Gates did was corroborate what other witnesses and what the 388 documents said.
Right, and the other witnesses were better witnesses because while they only got immunity, Gates got the skate with this, and that is not going to appeal to the jury. What I would have done as a prosecutor, and I've done it many times before, is I would have had Gates in my pocket. I would have rested on the accountants, the bookkeepers, the documentary evidence. That would force Manafort, in order to raise a defense, to either put Manafort on the stand or put witnesses. Then, as a prosecutor, I can cross-examine those witnesses and, if need be, call Gates as a rebuttal witness. But I said it then, and I say it now. He gave the defense the witness in Gates. He gave them the opportunity to say, you know what, they didn't have enough evidence in the documentary evidence, and if they did, they wouldn't have put this philanderer, this liar, this thiever, this person who got the break.
Wait, I forgot. Philanderer, liar, thief. Are we talking Gates, Trump, or Manafort?
We're talking Gates.
So many.
But I mean, as far as this trial, Stephanie, is concerned, you're right. I mean, it's a real cast of characters, and as a prosecutor, you got to be very careful that you don't have a juror that looks at it and says, wow, this is unbelievable. This guy's doing some really bad stuff, Gates, and he's escaped. And when the U.S. attorney says, I'm just saying the way it goes in a real courtroom as a real trial lawyer, and they say, well, he has to tell the truth or his plea agreement goes away. Well, truth is in the eyes of the beholder, Stephanie, and as far as the defense defense is bringing out and a juror is going to say, that truth is whatever Team USA, i.e. the U.S. attorney, wants. So he has every reason to lie. And so what do we see in the summation? We see the U.S. attorney trying to justify, well, forget about Gates. Let's go back to the evidence.
And Rick Gates was the only character you could assassinate because Paul Manafort never took the stand. Ken, how high are the stakes on this verdict? Not just for Paul Manafort, but for the Russia investigation as a whole.
The stakes are enormous, Stephanie. Not necessarily as a legal matter, because after all, Paul Manafort, even if he's acquitted, faces another trial on some more serious charges in Washington, D.C., across the river next month. But as a public relations matter, if Manafort is acquitted on all charges in this trial, it would be a huge public relations blow to Robert Mueller's investigation. Donald Trump and his amen corner in the right-wing media would trumpet this to the rafters, that this was the first time Mueller was tested in court and he failed the test. So I don't think the stakes could be any larger for the Robert Mueller special counsel investigation.
Well, then you two are going to have a lot of work to do today as you're focusing on this case. All right, we have to move on.